and we are a UK charity that campaigns to improve women's experience of pregnancy and childbirth through respect for human rights. The two founders, one was a barrister and one was at that point a human rights campaigner, and they were both sort of supporting friends and supporting women who were pregnant in London, and seeing sort of disrespectful care, and that hadn't really been framed in human rights language before, and that's really what sparked it off, as sort of framing it in this legal within the legal framework and the legal terminology, to set out both what wasn't right and what respectful care looked like and what was required within the law. So we use a range, really, depending on the issue that we're looking at. So we absolutely have intervened in court cases in the past, and we also have used judicial review as a tool. So, for example, during the pre-election period last year, there was a report that included statistics on the risk of dying for women from Black backgrounds, for Asian women from mixed ethnicity backgrounds, and that report wasn't released during the pre-election period. And we issued a pre-action letter to seek to have that report released before the election. We were very concerned that it was, going to be put off for quite a long time, and it was, as a result, it was published the day after the election. So, a reasonable win on that front. And then we also do, we do public campaigns, and we also work with NHS England and with the Royal Colleges, sort of behind the scenes on a lot of their work as well. We've seen a very significant increase in the number of individuals contacting us, particularly through our advice line over the pandemic. And I think the reason for that is that when the pandemic first became apparent in this country, health services put restrictions in place to sort of protect the NHS, I suppose, under the strapline, and that included restrictions on maternity services, restrictions on who could accompany a person who is giving birth or who is in labour, and who could be there on the postnatal ward. And initially, we did see some trusts completely clamp down and say that women weren't allowed to have anybody with them at all. That fairly quickly got reversed, but there's been a sort of a very long period where individuals haven't been able to have a partner with them, for example, for scans, or after they've given birth when they're on the postnatal ward, or indeed on the antenatal ward, for example, if they're having their labour induced. And still there are a lot of trusts where women can only have one partner with them during labour, and for some people that's fine, but there are others who have really good reasons for wanting a second person with them, be that a doula, be that their own mother, and with particular reasons for that and particular support needs. And what we have seen is that some trusts have been really good at looking at making exceptions on a case-by-case basis, and some really haven't, and they've taken a very blanket approach without necessarily considering the sort of needs of individuals. And then some of the other issues that we've seen, for example, with things like home birth services being shut down, and midwife-led units being shut down, and that leaves women who want to receive care in that way. In some cases, that left women feeling really unsafe, and we're certainly aware of a number of women who decided to give birth without assistance rather than coming into a hospital where they didn't particularly feel safe. We've launched a tool on our website which is aimed at maternity service leaders. It's called How to Run a Safe and Rights Respecting Maternity Service During a Pandemic, and it's a flowchart that goes through the stages that maternity service leaders need to be considering when they're deciding whether to introduce restrictions into maternity services as a result of the pressures of COVID. And it's simply a tool to help people think through decisions. So it looks at what what service leaders need to do when they're looking at whether they can keep existing services running and different ways to do that. If it's not possible to keep existing services running, it looks at the ways to assess the different options for temporary change, looking at both the impact on the spread of COVID of different options and the impact on the rights of women, birthing people and partners. And it talks about how to choose the most proportionate option and what that means, and about the requirements for trusts still to make reasonable adjustments under the Equality Act, and for trusts still to make exceptions on a case-by-case basis where that's necessary.